They came in the dark, not as runaways, not as beggars, not even as rebels. They came as an army. 2 columns, 2 sides, moving like a shadow that had learned how to hold steel. And when they hit Barquisimeto, Nueva Segovia, the night cracked open with a single war cry. Viva el Rey Miguel. That's not a metaphor. That's not a nickname. That's a title shouted in combat. And just for a moment, just a moment, the Spanish world in that region stopped making sense. Because the people who were supposed to be chained were now burning houses. Because the people who were supposed to be silent were now killing the vicario. Because the people who were supposed to beg for mercy were now promising war. The church went up, homes went up, the town fought back with reinforcement from El Tucuyo, and the attackers withdrew into the mountains, regrouping into the brush, breathing hard, holding stolen swords and homemade spears. And the man at the center of it all, the man they were cheering, was not some distant African prince out of legend. He was Puerto Rican, a criollo de San Juan, Puerto Rico, the chroniclers say, a black man born in the Spanish world of the Caribbean, fluent in its language, familiar with its customs, and sharp enough to turn that knowledge into a weapon. That's why I call him what the story proves him to be, the Puerto Rican King of Venezuela. Now, let me take you back to the beginning, back before the crown, back before the fire, back to the place where gold and cruelty mixed into the same muddy water, back to the mines of Buria. I am Dyron Castro Torres, the genealogist, and this is the Puerto Rican King of Venezuela, the rise and fall of King Miguel. I need to start where Miguel starts, not in Venezuela, but in San Juan de Puerto Rico. Miguel was born in San Juan, a black criollo of the Spanish Caribbean, raised inside the empire, fluent in its language, familiar with its laws, its violence, and its contradictions. This matters because Miguel did not learn Spanish from the outside. He learned it from the inside. And when the currents of colonization carried him off the island, as they carried so many enslaved people, families, and fortunes, he ended up on the mainland in what is now known as Venezuela. By the early 1550s, that mainland was hungry. Northwest Venezuela, the town of Nueva Segovia de Barquisimeto, had just been founded. Nearby, gold pulled men toward it like gravity and crushed them just as easily. The mines had a name, San Felipe de Buría. Spanish overseers, indigenous laborers, enslaved Africans forced into the work that turns human beings into tools. Day after day, bodies bent over mud and water, washing the earth for metals that would never belong to them. And among them was Miguel. The sources do not give us a gentle portrait. They never do when the subject is dangerous. One chronicler, Fray Pedro de Aguado, describes him as very fluent in the Castilian tongue, clever and experienced in trickery. That phrase, experienced in trickery, is not an observation. It's fear disguised as a moral judgment. Because what they are really saying is this: Miguel understood how power worked. And then came the moment when power miscalculated. A Spanish miner decided to punish Miguel with extreme severity. They moved to bind him, to whip him, to remind him who owns his body. Miguel refused. And when that rope came out, when the future was supposed to be pain and silence, Miguel did something irreversible. He seized a sword from one of the Spaniards and used it. Steel flashed where obedience was expected. Chaos broke out where routine had ruled. Miguel fought his way free and vanished into the wilderness. That moment is everything. Because once a man takes a weapon from the system that claims to own him, he crosses a line the empire can never forgive. Miguel fled into the forest, and there, away from the mines, he became more dangerous than he had ever been with a sword in his hand. he began to recruit. The chronicles tell us he moved by night, slipping back towards the edges of the Spanish world, whispering to enslaved Africans and indigenous workers, urging them to flee, to follow, to abandon servitude for something unthinkable. Freedom with structure, not chaos, not flight, a kingdom. At first, there were only a few, around 20 enslaved Africans, joined by indigenous allies, but the number grew. One later testimony speaks about 150 armed followers. Another account puts the number closer to 180 as more people abandoned the mines. The exact number matters less than the direction. This was not an outburst. This was organized liberation, forming quietly in the brush. Then, Miguel struck back. He led his people against the mines themselves, the place where Spanish power felt most secure. They attacked the overseers and the miners where gold was pulled from the earth, where cruelty was routine. The chroniclers say the assault was decisive. Spaniards known for brutality were killed. Others were spared, but not forgiven. Miguel sent them away with instructions. Go to Barquisimeto, tell them what happened. Tell them who is coming. This is strategy. Miguel didn't just win, he announced the victory, because fear travels faster than horses. And now, hidden deep in the mountains, Miguel did something that turned revolt into history. He built a state. In the interior of the mountain, Miguel established a settlement chosen for defense. Terrain that favored the hunted over the hunter. Ravines, rock, narrow approaches. Then, he organized his people using the only political language he knew, the language of Spain. He was proclaimed king. His companion, Guiomar, became queen. Their child was named prince. His bravest followers were appointed as ministers. And one man, known in the mines as the Canon, for his learning, was declared bishop. The chroniclers claim he built a church and said mass daily. Spanish writers mocked this as insolence. But mockery is a defense mechanism, because this wasn't fantasy. This was legitimacy, mirrored, repurposed, and turned against its creators. Spain understood that, which is why Spain would soon send soldiers. Miguel prepared for war. Mining tools became weapons. Metal plates used to wash gold were reforged into lances and darts. Stolen swords were kept. Indigenous allies brought bows and arrows. Extraction became resistance. The colony's own instruments were made to bite back. Before marching, Miguel spoke to his people. Fray Pedro de Aguado, hostile as he is, records the speech because it could not be ignored. Miguel told them that they were justified in seeking freedom because God created them free, like all other people, and because the Spaniards held them in perpetual servitude, a condition imposed on no other nation the same way. That argument is revolutionary in the 1550s. And then, Miguel used deception. He ordered indigenous allies to paint their bodies black with hagua dye, so the Spanish would believe the black army was larger, more terrifying, more unstoppable than it truly was. This is warfare of the mind. Miguel was not only fighting bodies, he was fighting perception. And then he marched. Before the Spanish could strike first, Miguel led his forces against Nueva Segovia de Barquisimeto. They attacked at night, from two sides, shouting the words that froze the town in place. Viva Rey Miguel! They burned houses. They burned the church. The priest was killed, along with several other townsmen. But Barquisimeto resisted, reinforced by fighters from El Tucuyo. Miguel withdrew into the mountains, regrouped, and returned to his settlement because he knew what was coming, and it was already on the move. Barquisimeto was shaken. Aguado says the colonists were disturbed, rattled by the audacity of enslaved people who dared to act like sovereigns. So they sent for help. El Tucuyo assembled armed men and placed them under Diego de Lozada, a hardened conquistador. With him marched men like Pedro Rodriguez and the formidable Diego Garcia de Paredes, praised as inheriting immense strength from his father. This was not a mob. This was a colonial execution force. They marched through brutal terrain, so harsh that even Spanish soldiers advanced on foot, like pilgrims, wearing crude footwear, struggling against the land itself. And among them was a contradiction. A free black man, Diego de la Fuente, celebrated for his exploits, who captured one of Miguel's followers and forced him to guide them towards the settlement. Black against black. Freedom bent into service. Empire using every tool it could find. The Spanish reached the river where women were washing their clothes. They captured them. And then Miguel's centuries cried out, "To arms! To arms! The bearded men are coming!" The empire was at the gate. Miguel's settlement was built for this moment. An embankment, a ravine, a palisade, rock and water, 2 gates guarding the approach. The Spanish attacked. Miguel's people pushed forward, resisting entry. Under pressure, they fell back inside the enclosure. The gates, left open in the chaos, were seized and held open by Spanish fighters, allowing the rest to pour in. Now, it was close. Not speeches, not symbols, close combat inside a threatened home. Miguel was called to surrender. He refused. In Castellano's poetic telling, Miguel answered that this day would be the beginning of his glory, not his submission, and that he had hands ready for blood. The meaning is clear. Miguel did not see himself as a fugitive. He saw himself as a sovereign at war. The fight became a collision of worlds. King Miguel hurled a lance forged from mining metal with such force that it pierced the Spanish shield and struck its bearer. And then came the hinge of history. The sources differ on how Miguel died. Fray Pedro de Aguado says he was struck down with a sword thrust and fell where he stood. Juan de Castellanos said that a crossbow bolt fired by Diego de Escorcha hit Miguel with devastating precision, destroying his sight before ending his life. Different weapon, same truth. Once Miguel fell, the resistance collapsed. Aguado says that his followers lost heart. The Spanish surged forward. Many were killed. The rest scattered into the wilderness. And this is where my voice must slow. Miguel did not die old. He did not retire. He did not negotiate. He died in the center of a struggle that he created because the empire could not allow a black king to remain alive. Guiomar, the queen, and their child, the prince, were captured and taken back to Barquisimeto, returned to slavery. And Oviedo y Baños leaves us with the cruelest image of all. They returned to their former slavery, dejected in chains, when they believed themselves raised to the throne, low in chains, when they had believed themselves crowned. This is not just tragedy. This is how colonial power corrects the world when the oppressed dare to redesign it. Miguel's rebellion was not an escape. It was not revenge. It was one of the earliest organized attempts by enslaved black people in the Americas to seize freedom and construct an independent political order beyond European domination. And though the king was killed, the king did not disappear. In Venezuela, Miguel survives in memory and folklore, among defenders of freedom remembered together in a spiritual court. So this is how I end it. Miguel's kingdom did not last long, but it existed. A Puerto Rican born under Spanish rule crossed the sea of empire, entered the mines of Venezuela, and did the one thing the colonizers could never forgive. He made enslaved people imagine themselves as citizens, soldiers, and a nation. And when the Spanish killed them, they weren't just killing a man. They were trying to kill an idea that freedom could wear a crown. But the story stayed in chronicles, in poems, in memories, and the cry that still echoes through the centuries. Viva el Rey Miguel. I am Dyron Castro Torres, the genealogist, and this is just the beginning.